Well, hello guys, how are you?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So
Doing well.
welcome all to the AWS Partners Meetup. I will talk about more about this meetup and this community group, and then we can move forward to the lineup for today. I'm very excited about our speakers. So I'll talk about this meetup group, the community group in general, and then we'll go over the speakers, the amazing speakers today, really leaders of business development from great companies, and they have great success stories to share with you today. So without further ado, let me just share my screen. Perfect. So as I mentioned before, AWS Partners Community Group, why I actually founded that group and a little bit about myself. My name is Nofar Asselman. I have around 10 years experience in the tech industry, and I'm currently the VP of Business Development at Epsagon. So about 3 years ago when I joined Epsagon, even before we had the product in GA, I thought about how we can get meaningful and strategic partnerships to really grow our business. And this is how I started to work with AWS and started to think of new ways on getting new business through the AWS Alliance. And since then, I understood that there is so much that I don't know, right? As you learn more, you understand how much you don't know. And I started to have conversations with colleagues. And I understood that in every single conversation that I have, I learned so much. So I realized, why not getting that on scale, and let's try to to arrange a meetup, and then another meetup and another meetup of more and more partners, AWS partners that share their stories, share their journeys, and this is how basically this community group was founded. I'm also an AWS community hero and really like to play tennis. I was a competitive tennis player, so if some of you are want to take a game with me, I'm be more than happy to. If you want to be a speaker in one of the next virtual meetups, please ping me on Twitter. And you also can read some of my blog posts about how to partner with AWS on the Medium blog. So what is the AWS Partners Community Group? I founded that in 2019 with the main goal of being partners focused. I've seen that there are so many great community groups of AWS users communities, but I felt that it's more addressing the technical people rather than the business executives that want to understand how they can build better products and solutions together with AWS. And now how we can actually take co-develop, co-market, and co-sell and packaging up in a partnership or alliance that can really benefit both sides. So that's really the purpose of this community group, really being focused on success stories or co-sell, co-develop, or co-marketing initiatives that worked well for AWS partners, and some of the things that didn't work well, so you could learn from others' experience and not and make the most of your time in really doing the things that matters the most. It's a completely community-led group, so you will only hear from partners. Sometimes we'll invite AWS folks like Ask the Experts kind of sessions, but there is no marketing or anything that we want to sell to anyone here. It's really mainly to share the knowledge of of AWS partners with each other. It's comparing notes and so on. So the lineup for today, and I'm very much excited. It's the second virtual meetup that I'm hosting actually, and we have a great lineup for today. We have Matthew Scott from Bridgecrew that has a lot of experience and some insights to share with you about how to build ISP partner strategy. And Sharon from Guardicore will share with us about how they are leveraging microservices with the channel sales that they're investing in. And last and not least, Udi, and well done on the latest news, will walk us through on how to get leadership commitment and really thriving the AWS partnership through leadership. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Matthew, and I hope you all enjoy. Each session, each talk would be for about 10 minutes. So we want to keep it quite short, and we're going to have a short panel in the end of questions with our speakers. Go ahead, Matthew.
Nofar, thank you so much for having me. I think this is a really important community. I think that partner teams really like to share their story, and just by nature of what we do as partner people. So I'm thrilled to share ours. As you mentioned, I'm a vice president of business development at Bridgecrew. I've been in the tech space for over 20 years. I live in Seattle, Washington. So thanks for having me join this team for the talk. I've been in the cloud space now for about 11 years. So early in my career, I was doing data center and wholesale internet backbone design for large companies. And one of my customers was Amazon. And so I sold data center infrastructure to the team that later became AWS. And in 2010, they tapped me on the shoulder to join AWS as the first sales leader for North and South America. So I showed up on a Monday. I went through about an hour of orientation. And then all of a sudden, I owned 80% of AWS revenue. And talk about that being an extremely overwhelming situation. There were 9 of us in sales at the time, and there was really no clear way to talk to the partner community about how they helped customers on the journey. So I've written a little bit about that. I'm going to share a couple articles later on. We'll include some links because there's so much to share, and 10 minutes can never capture that. So my starting point, I came from a software security company before I joined AWS. I'd left the data center space and went to a software security company and had built a channel business on top of what was a direct software company. And the way that I looked at how we talked about where partners fit in here were basically these 9 categories. And so when we would help introduce a partner to one of our customers, we would kind of talk about how that partner was complementary. And so I took the same skill set and identification of partners into the AWS business in 2010. And what was really interesting about the business at the time was that AWS, I can talk about these numbers now, in 2010 when I joined, was a $290 million run rate business, right? Now it's over 50 billion. And our largest customers at the time were all startups and non-Fortune 500, right? So how you built a partner ecosystem for them is very different than how you build a partner ecosystem for Fortune 500 or more established companies, right? There were a few 100,000 customers, now there are millions. And some of the more interesting things too in 2010 was that only 8% of customers opted into support. So because AWS at the time and still now is very much a la carte, customers could add compute or storage and also support. And when you gave customers the opportunity to opt into support, only 8% of those opted in. And so for us, it was really important to get that number higher. You can imagine when you're in sales and only 8% of your customers opt into support, it kind of falls on you as a sales and partner organization to provide that support to your customers. And so it was very critical for us to begin identifying and creating at the time the Amazon Partner Network. And this theme of creating these partner ecosystems keeps repeating in my career. And so as some of you may know, Bridgecrew was recently acquired by Palo Alto Networks. So I find myself, coming into a new business, wanting to create a shared language and shared framework to build a partner ecosystem that lets organizations use a shared language and really consistently build a partner program. And so I think when you look at what we did initially at AWS in 2010, as I said, we really have to start with some building blocks, right? We have to say you're either a software provider or technology partner, or you're a consulting partner. You're providing services and engineering and helping customers on their AWS cloud journey. That was a start, right? But how do you really differentiate the technology that you are providing if you are providing security or if you're providing cost optimization. That didn't yet exist, right? But it was a kind of a step in that direction. Similar with consulting, you could have been a 100,000 person consulting organization or a 5-person consulting organization. How did you start to differentiate, what that meant in the context of the entire AWS journey, right? It was a very bespoke conversation that we would have with customers, and we would try to fit these partner organizations into these different categories, right? And what happens at AWS is that these categories had direct conflicts with the areas that we were offering, right? Like AWS is providing the data center infrastructure, and AWS is not going to allow you to put third-party hardware in the data center. So you started to collapse what was, in talking to partners and talking to customers about what are the categories we're providing direct support for and where can our partners fit? And so you started to see this consolidation of the categories. And the other piece to call out is that the traditional IT budgeting process kind of flipped on its head, right? It was no longer about, I'm going to budget $10 million to spend on my technology. It was that I'm going to build this technology, and based on the demand, I'm going to have a certain cost there. So that category in particular was a really interesting one. And I found myself working in that a little later. So that's there for a reason. So I think a lot of people are reasonably familiar with Amazon's leadership principles. There are 14 of them. You search on the internet Amazon leadership principles, you'll come across a site. You'll probably land on an Amazon recruiting site based on how much hiring they do. And I think that the one leadership principle that we talk a lot about is this notion of customer obsession, like really obsessing about the customer. And so if you think about those categories we were building on the partner side in terms of how we were communicating that, it was really how we were communicating to partners. It didn't do a lot to describe that kind of customer obsessed view and how customers were on their journey with AWS. So in 2015, you saw the first AWS partner competency released, and this was the DevOps competency. I'd left and started my own marketplace and consulting organization, and we were one of the launch partners externally for this DevOps competency. So it gave us the ability to describe ourselves as being able to obtain this cloud native outcome from a consulting standpoint, for the customer. And then in 2015, AWS introduced the Well-Architected Framework. And what is the Well-Architected Framework? The Well-Architected Framework describes this components in this shared language of what customers are doing on their cloud journey. So in my case, it allowed us to describe in this shared language that AWS was using themselves, as well as how we were describing the customer journey in these 5 buckets, right? There were 6 at the time, it's been consolidated down to 5. I found myself in 2017, after we had sold our first couple of startups, running strategy and business development for a cost optimization provider called Cloudability. And when I got to Cloudability, we didn't have a shared language to describe what we were doing. We would talk about the fact that we could help customers, save on their bill. But as I think a lot of people on this panel have experienced in their career as a partner person, you come into an organization and everyone has all these great ideas to partner. And there might have been some other cost optimizations partners that wanted to partner with Cloudability. And so I wanted a strategic framework to describe what we did. And I wanted that for a few reasons. I wanted to show in basically lateral terms in this graphic, the customer journey starts on the left and it moves to the right. So when you find yourself as a technology provider in the cost optimization category, for example, your customers have already done most of what's on the left of you. And so if some of the great ideas internally were, hey, we want to partner with other cost optimization providers to expand that portion of the market, you're very late in that customer journey itself, right? So when we started to use this language internally and externally to describe this portion of the well-architected framework that we were in as a cost optimization provider, what came out of that is we had a lot of customers tell us that the category that they purchased and used right before the cost optimization category was the performance efficiency. And what we learned about using this framework, so engineering teams that would talk to customers or product managers that would talk to customers, they started talking about cloudability in this sense of being in this leader of the cost optimization pillar. And that customers said, hey, 85% of the time before they bought cloudability, they bought Datadog or they bought New Relic. And they wanted to use the metrics that were available from these APM tools to power their cost optimization recommendations. So we built customer-obsessed technology integrations with Datadog and New Relic, and they became our third largest contributor of new customers after AWS in our channel. So by using this shared framework and this evolution of how AWS talked about partners in kind of this shared language of the well-architected framework, it really led us to think about how we build software integrations and how we do that. And then, of course, we expanded into these other categories to get ourselves closer and closer to that beginning point of the customer. So that's the talk for today. So yeah, thanks for having me, and happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you, Matthew. Super interesting. You have so much experience, years of experience, since the past life of AWS, and it was very interesting to learn how everything was evolved and how you actually take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Yeah,
you're next.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. I hope that you can see my screen. And I will talk about trying to scale channel sales through AWS Marketplace, and more specifically, trying to tell you about a recent trick that we have discovered and is helping us. So just to introduce myself, Sharon, the picture always looks better, so I decided that you can look and compare. I am fortunate enough to be part of the information and network and application security, what today we call cyber, since 1994. Which just means that I'm pretty old. Joined Guardicore about 6 years ago in various positions. And for the past year and 9 months, I think I'm responsible for the business development, which actually means for us is the alliances, technology integrations, and partnerships. Guardicore is a software company. We do software-based segmentation mostly. This is what we are known for. Also, people see us as a hybrid cloud security company. Been established in 2013, in production with customers since 2016, and very proud of being the best place to work for and the most innovative security company for 2020. Talking a little bit about sales within Guardicore. There's a high touch model. Our customers tends to be very large. I'll explain more in the next slide, but there's a lot of direct touch from our team. But we designed the company from day one to work with and via the channel. So other sellers that are responsible to bring our message and deliver our product and hopefully generate business, revenue, traction with customers. We always fulfill through the channel. The model could be that the customer sends a PO to a partner that sends the PO to a Guardicore, or in some territories where it makes sense, we actually work through a distributor. So there are a couple of touch points between us and the customers when it comes to the actual transaction. But again, remember that there's a lot of high touch where we are working with the customers, doing POCs, designing, writing documents, SOWs, etc. We are also working with global system integrators, some local value-added resellers, smaller integrators, sometimes people that are actually understand the customer environments, their needs, and can work with them. We have about 30 sales teams worldwide, so it's combinations of a seller and a sales engineer and SDR that needs to back them up, and about 50 technology alliance and product integrations where AWS is one of them. We have two products. One is a commercial solution that fits very large customers, and an open source and free product that is very useful, considered one of the best tools in its own category, and it's completely free and completely open source, solves a big pain to customers. When we are thinking about, when I'm thinking about alliances and partnership and what is it that I need to do in order to be successful in my job and help Guardicore to be more successful and to grow faster and to reach the Snyk evaluations, and actually we plan to beat you guys faster, obviously. We need leads that turns into prospects, that turns into happy customers, so that we could translate this into revenue that will allow us to invest more in the company and to continue to feed the machine and to be even more successful. I'll pause here and talk about what is it that we do with AWS. So we are available on the marketplace, and we are a part of the ISV accelerator program. We've got multiple AWS references, customers that likes us and talks about us and publish papers with us. And we have multiple integrations into almost all of the relevant compute platforms that the customers care about. Remember that our customers are those extra large customers that owns everything, and we've got competency and etc. But there is a challenge, and the challenge with large customers is that they tend to have everything, and they tend to be complicated. And even those that we publicly talk about, AWS is part of their network and solution, and we are typically arriving late to the game, so in terms of their cloud decisions. So many times we are not part of the early days of when a customer needs to decide about which cloud to select, or sometimes they are part of we got into an opportunity when there is already a problem in place that we need to help and to solve. If we're trying to drill down into what is it that we are doing with AWS and how is it that we are helping AWS specifically to solve a problem, which is the what AWS partnership is all about and what AWS sellers are looking for, we solve two, in my opinion, very interesting problems. One is how to migrate faster to the cloud, which helps the IBM, which helps the AWS seller eventually sell faster, and the customers consume more VM resources faster. And the second one is to keep the entire infrastructure secure before, during, and after the migration. So we do not migrate workloads ourselves, but our capabilities helps the organization to migrate faster to AWS. But is it enough? Is it enough in order to have a fruitful partnership with AWS? especially when we are not the ones that are making the decision about migration, or that we are not the ones that are able to influence it early enough. So the answer is no. And to add on top of that, another challenge that we are facing is how to fulfill through AWS. Remember that the model that we have is that a customer is buying from a partner that is issuing the PO to Guardicore, and in some places there is the distributor, which means that now selling through the marketplace, if you are a partner, which is basically the holy grail of having a relationship through AWS, is going to be very difficult to try and to introduce another player in this effort to fulfill a customer requirement. So again, the answer is no. Not only that, from a feature set of capabilities to the AWS seller, we don't provide something that is interesting enough. And also from the process perspective, there is a challenge. So what I would like to introduce is relatively a recent program that is known as the Consulting Partner Private Offers, known as CPPO. And what CPPO does, it allows a partner that is also a registered AWS consulting partner to offer a private offer on behalf of the ISV. So in that case, you've got the customer, you've got the ISV, you've got the vendor that is offering a solution through the marketplace, and using the private offers, which is a vehicle that was always available for ISVs to offer specific programs and benefits to the end customer. Now the consulting partner, which is basically the value-added reseller or GSI or anyone else that can have a relationship with AWS, can now offer a solution on Guardicore's behalf to the end user and actually continue the same process as always, as they are used to do. And no actually becomes the yes. And there are a couple of anecdotal stories that I wanted to share here that I think that simply makes a lot of, to me, they make a lot of sense and create enthusiasm. When we first heard about the CPPO program and went to the sales leadership to introduce the program and to ask them how to implement it, the feedback was negative. They didn't thought that such program would yield the necessary results. They thought that our channel partners would be not happy to share information with another company as big as AWS. They didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize a deal. But actually, we've got the feedback from our consulting partners asking us to implement the program for them, because for them, it creates more control. It gives them all the benefits of selling through the marketplace as if they were the ISV, meaning us. So contracts with the customer running a specific MSA or service program, etc. So from having a solution that traditionally we have to fight in order to implement in an organization that sells through the channel and would like to maintain such channel interest without creating conflict and friction, it actually became a very useful tool. And I recommend you all to evaluate and see how it could make sense for you guys. And that's all for me, and would love to get questions at the end if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Definitely the marketplace, I think one of the things that can really accelerate sales cycle, and especially with channel partners. So I think that angle through how to use channels with the marketplace is a very important motion to be aware of. And Udi, you're next. It's a truly global meetup, right? We have Udi from London, Matthew from the States, Sharon from Israel, and I'm also from Israel. That's very cool.
Absolutely.
Right,
just missing Singapore here on the list. I want to second Sharon's message about CPPO. Snyk has been listed on the marketplace for less than a year. And if you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have expected CPPO to be more than a corner case, but it's very, very clear that AWS are looking at this strategically, and partners that get it are on board and know what to do and how to use that to grow business. And then ISVs who are channel focused, like Guardicore, like Snyk, are definitely able to grow this way. So it's a very impressive program. And I also, before I start, just want to say to Matthew, I didn't realize you were like one of the old timers at AWS. That's very exciting, especially this week. I think it was 15 years, right, for S3.
It was, yeah. 15.
You must have a lot of stories.
But some that I can share over a coffee next time. Yeah,
absolutely. So slide showing okay? Cool, good. So I'm Udi, I'm based in London, as Nofar mentioned, and I wanted to talk a bit about the internal journey of growing an AWS relationship, especially in a company like Snyk that has grown so fast in 5 or 6 years. That presents very specific challenges to biz dev professionals like myself, very interesting ones for sure. So a bit about me. I've been in tech a couple of decades. I've been in the cloud native space since about 2012 and joined Snyk about 2.5 years ago. I've worked with AWS for since 2014 on behalf of different ISVs. And I've enjoyed every second. I'm a big fan of the AWS culture and the leadership principles that Matthew mentioned before. And you can find me on Twitter like everyone else. So Snyk, and yes, it is March 16th, so I had to update the slide with both with the number of employees and the number of money we've raised. So things are moving pretty fast, and that's great. That presents a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges as well. If you think about how an organization grows so fast. And many a book has been written about this from likes of Facebook and others. But also, I'll mention a bit later, it also presents this challenge of you almost have to sell the organization on why they need to partner closely with AWS or with other technology partners or with system integrators or with the channel for that matter. That's a very interesting discussion to have. So I'll just break it down into different periods. And the early years, it's really about just opening as many opportunities as possible. That's the role of a biz dev professional at that stage, in my opinion, just saying yes to everything. So in the beginning, we ran on AWS. We made a strategic choice because somebody gave us some credits and we said yes. And then we started to build on AWS. We also built early integrations into Lambda soon after it was launched in GA. And I'll talk a bit about that in a second. And then somebody from another cloud came with more credits. So we moved to that cloud, which was another strategic choice for a very young company. So beware strategic choices at these early stages. But really, the job of a business person really is to say yes and open up as many doors as possible. And this is an example of our founder guy, Bridgecrew, in a very early serverless conf talk, talking about serverless security, right? Who knew that your function could be vulnerable? So that's, very early in the game. And obviously we thought that would bring us a lot of AWS customers flying our way, which did not exactly happen, but something else happened. We hit product market fit, which was great in 2018 or so. And the growth was really bottom up, right? Through a freemium purchasing model, right? So developers adopt Snyk for free, and then it moves up into their day jobs. And in the end, we have a paying customer, mostly inbound, which is great, and mostly direct. So it's really a question of like, oh, so why do we need AWS? Why do we need Marketplace? Why do we need Optiv? Why do we need to work with Accenture? I mean, all those questions, share a similar kind of notion. And it's really about reminding the organization, reminding the leadership that, there are things kind of around the bend that you're not thinking about, right? So it's great that you have the enterprise logo as a customer on the website, but that's just 10 people that bought a license coming in cold from the internet. That's not selling to that logo. And to sell to that company, you need partners that make you look like an enterprise and also challenge you to get to certain levels. And in order to really build a relationship, it's also about, what can we give to get from these partners? So in the case of AWS, it was migrating a key service about a year ago, which was the right strategic decision in terms of infrastructure, but also helped a lot with unlocking the executive relationship. So really BD in this case is, on the one hand, externally behaving as if everything is normal and everything is strategically moving along. And on the other hand, kind of internally, really evangelizing why we need to think about this now and not later. And some examples of the things we did, all of these examples, whether it's announcing, integrations or closer enterprise processes, doing a joint talk, listing on the marketplace, all of these were heavily, if not exclusively, owned by the business development team. So this is guerrilla warfare, taking the organization to specific places and then hoping that the right functions will follow. And I think in the past year or so, we've finally seen kind of a breakthrough internally in our leadership, really keen to understand, we see all this interest from AWS. We see all these deals closing that are influenced by AWS. We see some marketplace action. We see executives talking to us from AWS and other customers asking about our, AWS strategy. And this is becoming a C-level discussion topic and a board-level discussion topic on a regular basis. And that's fantastic for any business development person to hear. So we're, defining the marketplace use cases, right? It's a great thing to use when these things line up. It might be a less great thing to use in other cases. And what does that mean? And constantly evangelizing to sales. I like to paraphrase the famous Kevin Costner quote and say, if you build it and invest in it and market it and engineer it and enable it and evangelize it and invest more in it, then they will come. Maybe. It's that simple. And all that activity leads to an impatience sometimes, which is ironic because, you were the one pushing in the past, but now leadership is coming to you and asking us like, okay, so, when is this number going to be that number, right? When is this relationship going to be 5 times, what it is today, et cetera, et cetera. And it's constantly about, this is how they speak. These are their acronyms. These are their principles, and these are ours. And how do we make them meet? How do we look at the bigger picture? It's not just about one piece. It's a huge beast, and it's really an account GM kind of position. And it's really about managing expectations. So the way I kind of thought of presenting this to management, so far so good. Went on Unsplash and found this nice little photo of a cloud trail. And every time somebody asks me on a review, I just go back to the slide and say, we've made great progress, but there's still so much to go, right? And constantly drive that message of, we will get there after we do these other things, right? So it's great that we had that integration with Lambda, but that in itself mattered to very few people, right? We had to play the game and speak the AWS dialect, certifications, case studies, etc., to even get included in these conversations, be an IPN as an advanced partner. But even then, it's just a stepping stone, right? We have to understand what the value prop is. AWS sellers are notoriously busy. So how do we move the needle for them, and what are the right ways and what are the right tools to build to make that happen? Then, how do we get into more, premium co-sell groups, and how do we create a cadence with our executives and some of their executives? What does a joint business plan look like? And that's where we are right now. And then, guess what? There's more work to do. There's another hill, and we have to climb that as well. So just a framework that I found useful to communicate that this is anything but a linear journey. So really about, being transparent about, being very consistent about that message, educating the organization about how AWS works. AWS is different. Amazon is different, and we can learn about some of these leadership principles, to Matthew's point before, and use them to our advantage in growing a joint business, understanding their motivations, and also internally, if as a professional growing in such a fast-growing organization, is also evolving into that account GM kind of position. Whether you have the title or not doesn't matter. That's what you do. And that means relying on more and more people outside of your immediate team and trusting them to do parts of that work. That's the main point for me. I've added some QR codes that people can scan, a couple of resources. One of them was mentioned before, leadership principles, and the other one, a webinar with our partner Tackle, where myself, but also a couple of other of their customers talk about some of their marketplace experiences, which I thought was a good share. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rudy. I'm curious to learn, what was the turning point to get the buy-in from your leadership? Because probably Matthew and Sharon can relate as well, because most of the times when you're building the AWS Alliance, you would have to put some resources and commitment from your end before you even see value from AWS. So what was the turning point when the leadership said, okay, let's go for it. We believe in that motion. Udi, Sharon, Matthew, that's a question for all of you. Probably you've had your fair share, but probably with leadership trying to convince the value even before you see the results coming through.
Yeah, so I'll just take it first and just reiterate, it's really a game of almost like poker, right? It's the ante. So it's you give something and you tell the leadership, that's what I expect to get, and then you get it hopefully, and then you take the next step. So it's both that gradual incremental approach, but also understanding that it's not going to be a 1-2. It's going to be longer.
Yeah, I will echo what Udi said. It's I think that at the end of the day, it's about people's ability to be consistent and to push and to be like this bug that needs to continuously push its pile up the hill in order to see results. There are tons of success stories, but there are even a bigger and larger number of other examples where it didn't work, and then suddenly something is changing. I would like to give a lot of credit to our PDM based out of Israel, though I think that he's the person that actually, he has self-commitment to deliver and to do things. And looking at myself as an example, we have about 50 alliances. Not with all of them we have the same success, but I think that it's about the people and their commitment to do something successful. And I actually liked what Udi presented, this base camp trail all the way up to the top of the hill, because only when you're at the top of the hill you realize that you are there, and it's very difficult to be there and then find that and to see that.
One of the so cool, Udi, that you included the leadership principles, because I'm going to put one to use right here, and it's the principle of being right a lot. So I think both Sharon and Udi did an awesome job of highlighting the role that we all find ourselves in, which is to convince the business and become the cheerleader of our very important partnership at AWS. But you have to be right. And how do you take these proofs that you're offering and provide the given and provide that result? And I think what I've experienced is, yes, you have to be the cheerleader, but you want the data to show that this is correct, right? And so even in a direct bottoms-up motion, in an AWS co-sell, where you're bringing the customer opportunity to Amazon, you might even take that direct, or it may have come through a partner that doesn't participate in CPPO. There's all sorts of dynamics in the partner community. What you should see is an improvement in your sales cycle times, your average deal size. And I think that those are the metrics that you should be measuring, right? And that leadership principle of being right a lot, connecting these ideas that we have and this vision that we have to the actual sales operational metrics, or how the business tends to speak in sales most clearly, right? When it comes to validating these partnerships. But Udi, your point about building to Lambda, like it's you need to be there, but what does that result in, right? It results in these customer logos and case studies and references and this kind of follow-on activity. And so once again, coming back to these leadership principles, being right a lot is really important. There's another one that Amazon used to use that fell out of favor because it became the Socratic method sword, which was disagree and commit. But I think we also need to do that in our roles too, right? Which is sometimes people have ideas, and Udi, I think you touched on this with like, you have all these team members, especially at the executive level, that a board member tells them something, and everyone gets super excited about an idea. And sometimes your job is to make sure you keep focused on the business and be that voice of commitment to the partnership, not necessarily disagreeing, but being really committed to those things that you think are going to work, and measure them. So yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And we have another question about what is the ideal time, to start a partnership with AWS? I know I get asked that question quite a lot. Lots of early stage startups asking me, look, we've seen that you're doing tremendously with AWS. We see Epsagon here and there. And how do you do that? And when shall we start doing that? Just because, smaller startups, usually they don't have the resources actually to put, in AWS partnership. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. I'm obviously a huge believer in the AWS Alliance, and we started even before we got round A, we started to work with AWS pretty early on. I remember that 3 months after GA, we were already in the marketplace, listed on the marketplace, as well as in the private offers. And in the first reInvent ever for us, even before we had a booth, we were able to be featured in AWS CTO's keynote as one of 8 partners, just because we launched a product together with AWS. Matthew, to your point, with the well-architected, how you can actually take, co-develop and leverage that to marketing and getting credibility. So for us, it was very successful very early on. I'd love to learn about, what's your takes on that,
Yeah, I'll take the first, and I'll try to be brief. I mean, I think it's never too early to start a partnership with AWS. I think the subtext to your question is, when do you hire someone to start that partnership and maybe dedicate it as well? I look at our roles as really having four really important components: sales, marketing, product, and engineering. These BD roles with Amazon, in particular, it's super important to be that strategic voice across all those four. So you, in some sense, become a shadow CEO. You're running strategy for the business with respect to AWS across all those four groups. So if you're not yet ready, you're not funded, you don't have the revenue, or you can't hire that person, what I would say is it's really important for those four groups within the business to come together and have a discussion about how they want to work with Amazon together. If you put it just on sales, it turns into, hey, we're not getting much, from this relationship. Why aren't we getting leads from Amazon? Or, hey, we're writing blogs, but why aren't we doing product work? All four of those teams need to be, in line. And so if you're not yet ready to hire that role yet, make sure that those four leaders or four teams are sitting down and talking about that joint leadership strategy. And then, really follow your customer, right? Like if you're hearing the connection to Amazon, and you have that customer base, it's probably time. So Udi and Sharon, I'd love to hear your feedback too.
So I totally agree with what you said. In my opinion, there's one additional item to consider, and that's the type of product that you are providing. So if you have a solution that is tightly coupled into an AWS offer that is relevant only for AWS or specifically for AWS, and it would make the AWS sellers' life different, then you should probably start the partnership earlier. But if you are part of a larger IT play or a stack and so on, then it means that the path to the hill is going to be a much longer, and you must have a longer or a wider base, and in order not to be disappointed too much and to be able to get those so needed victories, you should probably start later. But everything else that you've said, I think it's perfect analogy to how organizations that would like to engage with AWS should think about those four pillars of what they need to deliver in order to be successful.
Yeah, I would totally agree with both of you there. I think from a product and infrastructure point of view, the only thing I'd say, yes, it depends, but also I don't think it's an Amazon leadership principle, but there's something Jeff Bezos says about two types of decisions, right? One that is reversible and one that isn't. So just be, in any partnership early on, being careful of decisions that are hard to reverse as the cement dries is good practice. And like any company, Snyk has made those mistakes as well. But I'd like to also touch on what Matthew said about sales. Like I've seen many situations where, ISVs have gone in early, put in listed on the marketplace, and then nothing happened. And then a year goes by, and because there's nobody there, or there's no support for the person there across the org to consistently push that rock uphill, it's sometimes perceived as, it's not a success or even a failure. Why should we invest again? Why should we invest more? Because in 2 years ago that happened. So that's also something like going in, but also understanding that it's not, you have to keep pushing it continuously.
Definitely. Well, guys, I think that that's all for today. I really appreciate the time and your insights. I was very excited that the three of you agreed to participate, and I thought that having you three in this meetup will really help our startup in really any stage, just to learn about what is actually possible. And I do encourage everyone that is watching reach out to you and to me directly and learn more. I think there is it's the main purpose for this, speed talks, really to understand how much there is to uncover and how much we can you can maybe potentially do together with AWS or with other partners like Matthew described at the beginning. And I really want to thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Nofar. It's been great.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk partnerships with partner people. We don't always get to do that, so thanks.
Yeah, well, this is instead of meeting at RSA this year, so
definitely.
Hopefully reInvent later this year.
Fingers crossed, definitely. So thank you again, and we'll meet again in the next community meetup.